What is going on, Belly Up Sports family? I am Parker Ainsworth at Belly Up Sports. We're all here from Belly Up Sports to talk about Game 3 and preview Game 3 of the NBA Finals. I'm joined by Antonio Perez, Danielle DuBose, and Kevin Wilson. I'm going to start with Antonio because you have the jerseys hanging up in the background. You've got the sweatshirt on. You cover the Celtics for Belly Up Sports. Talk us through pre-pod, behind the scenes here. You were saying you're a little shaky. How are you feeling right now?
It as the team who doesn't have home court advantage, you take you look at it, you try to look at it as, all right, you take the one game in Golden State, you're coming back home, pressure's back on you. It's a little different when you lose that second game and in the fashion that you lose it on. No adjustments made and all that, but I'm excited for game 3. I expect big games from Brown and Tatum. I expect Al Horford to not have 2 points again. So I'm excited. Like, obviously, it's always nerve-wracking playing Golden State, especially the way the last game went. Draymond was physical. Steph Curry was Steph Curry's offense. And Jordan Poole started to get hot. So, I mean, I'm nervous, but I'm excited. I can't ask for anything more. The Celtics are in the finals, so let's get it.
Celtics in the finals, hard to complain. Danielle, I found out before the podcast you're also a Celtics fan. Are you shaky as well? Are you like, how are you feeling?
I'm kind of feeling a little bit of everything. I feel like I'm very confident in this team because we've seen amazing games from them, and they can compete very well against the Warriors. And I do have that confidence going back into home arena. I mean, TD Garden is an electric place to play in the playoffs. So I do feel confident in that aspect. But in the third quarter of the second game, that was just absolutely traumatizing as a Celtics fan. So that does worry me a little bit for this game. But like Antonio said, it should be a really great competitive game.
Well, and, the Warriors in the third quarter are kind of a thing. We'll get to that more in a second. Kevin, all right, you got a Jazz jersey on. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, as you can see. Jazz, so I'm not Celtics. I'm not Warriors. I am a basketball guy. So I'm looking forward to the game tonight. And hopefully we'll have a competitive game, which we have not had up until this point.
It's been a playoffs without the whole lot of those.
It really has been. When you look at, what the Mavericks and Phoenix did, there was no close games there. So hopefully we get our basketball straightened out right here. We've got a 103-100 game with 1 minute to play, and we'll see what happens.
Well, except that if, as Danielle points out, third quarter Warriors happen, it could be 103-100 with a minute left, and then they win by 15. You just
exactly.
4 shots.
It definitely happens.
All right, so I do want to talk about, because we're coming into this and right before Game 3. This is pregame. We're going to go try and go all the way up till tip-off Game 3. As several of y'all mentioned, we're 2 games into the series, and we had 2 dramatically different feeling games. One, obviously, the Celtics came out with a big fourth quarter comeback and a big win in Game 1. Game 2, Antonio mentioned that the Celtics didn't make as many adjustments. I'd argue the Warriors made a couple, but, that's the way it goes. Danielle, talk me through, as a Celtics fan that watched the 2 games, what did you notice as trends between the 2? What are you taking away from those as you're heading into this game?
I'm taking away that Tatum can be that leader for the Celtics. And it was a little bit iffy there in the Bucks series, in the Heat series. He didn't show up that much in some key games, and that really worried me as a Celtics fan. But these last 2 games have really shown me how great of a player he can be and how great he is at leading the team in points. In Game 2, even though we did lose, he put up like 25, 26 points, and it was pretty quiet. I feel like at the beginning of that game, everybody was like, oh, JB is going off. Jaylen Brown is just having such a game, but Jason Tatum had more points than him, and nobody was talking about it. And I feel like he's just been kind of the silent leader of this series, and I think that can carry through.
Well, and obviously Kobe did a little less silently, but he's doing the mid-range assassin kind of way that his idol Kobe Bryant's. He's done the armband, the pregame outfits, the whole 9. Kevin, you've seen a lot of NBA Finals, and I don't mean that as a slight. I mean, you're a veteran in this. How are you feeling going into Game 3 after seeing the kind of back and forth? Like you mentioned, 2 lopsided victories in the first 2 games.
Well, I'm not surprised that it's 1-1, but I am surprised about how we got here because the Celtics had a hard, series against Miami, and Golden State put the Mavericks away with relative ease. So I thought it would be kind of like Miami and the Celtics in the first game of their series, where Miami won that game, and then the Celtics came back and won game two. Well, we had the exact opposite here, where the Celtics won game one, and then Golden State won game two. So it was a little bit different from what I expected. And as you mentioned, this third quarter, if the Celtics are going to win this series, they're going to have to figure out this third quarter problem that they've had in both of these games, because they cannot expect to come back from a 12-point, 13, 14-point fourth quarter deficit in every game. So they need to put together a good third quarter in this game right here.
Well, and to be fair, they did the one time. Obviously, they did it the first time in game one and kind of surprised everyone. A big Al Horford quarter. Yeah. Antonio, you're, again, the Celtics beat writer for Belly Up Sports. You cover them very thoroughly. And frankly, y'all should go check out his author page on the website.
Yes, you should.
You've watched this a lot. And so Kevin brings up it's hard to fight and come back in the fourth quarter down 13 points. You've watched Udoka's single year in the NBA as a head coach as well as anybody. What kinds of things do you see happening after watching the first two games? You mentioned you didn't see a lot of adjustments in game two.
So Udoka, I don't know if it's much more on Udoka for what he's telling the players to do, but his rotations have been rough. So in that last third quarter stretch, you have Tatum out on the floor, and then you have Pritchard, Grant Williams, and Daniel Tice. I love all three of those players as much as anyone else. If Grant isn't hitting that corner three, they're all ball handlers are going to pick on him defensively, even though he's a pretty good defender. Daniel Tice and same with Robert Williams are scared to step up after Curry's getting his screens. They're scared to get beat by, but at that point, it's no point. A layup is as easy as a three-pointer for him. You might as well defend what's going to get more points. And Pritchard, he is as off and on defensively. You'll find a couple clips. He defended Curry very well game one, but you can get guys like Wiggins, or you can get even like Clay, guys who could just shoot right over him. It's not a good matchup. All during the Miami series, Pritchard was almost unplayable, but he's such a spark plug, kind of like Jordan Poole in a way, that you want to get him on the floor. So Udoka's main, I think, fail not to adjust is simply he has to realize who he needs out there to close quarters. I think quarters, when you're closing out quarters, you need at least Smart or White out there, and then you need at least Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum out there. So you have one primary ball handler, one go-to scorer, and another adjustment, not really on Udoka, but Tatum. Obviously, everyone knows that he idolizes Kobe. Kobe told that young team when he had like D'Lo, Jay Randall, Kobe told them after like a big loss, he was like, "I'm touching the ball every time down the court." And I think Tatum needs to do that. He usually starts every play in the corner, and he'll get a down screen come up. I think he should just simply bring up the ball or get the ball with 18 seconds on the clock, run the offense through yourself. That's the difference between guys like him and then Luke and guys like Luka or Giannis. They're just running their offense. I think he needs to be the system.
Well, and I will say, I think it's interesting that when you look at like systems, that you could almost point out that the Celtics system hasn't been working in the sense that it hadn't gotten to the rim a lot, right? I think I heard an interesting stat the other day that was, whatever you think about Tatum and his scoring or the way Brown's gotten hot, or even in game one, like I mentioned now, Horford, the Celtics as a team have only had 14 shots inside of 4 feet. And that, frankly, strikes me like as not enough for like a guy like Jason Tatum on his own. And that's where they're at as a team. And they've been competitive for large stretches. It's not like the mid-range thing and living and dying by the three has not worked. I don't mean to say that it's like a failed formula, but man, like some layups, like just like getting to the rim, putting foul pressure on a guy like a Draymond Green or whatever, those kind of things would be more, I think easier. There's a better way to say it, more easier. Danielle, you're kind of chuckling at that. Obviously, you point out like Tatum is scoring a lot of points. It's not a lack of offense, but have you noticed anything odd stylistically in what they're doing?
It is very interesting how I think kind of everybody on the Celtics wants to take that 3-pointer shot. And even like Pritchard, Tice, White, it's fine, but I feel like just sometimes you really don't need to take that shot. In order for the Celtics to win and put up those major points to beat the Warriors, they need to pass the ball and really show, like set it up and be able to kind of settle it in their zone. I feel like a lot of the times Marcus Smart will just kind of dribble it down and automatically just shoot that 3 and try to do the half quarter that Jordan Poole did, but absolutely fail because it's Marcus Smart. He's not going to make that 3-point shot every single time. And I think if we settle it in the paint more often and we're able to kind of get those shots, as well as getting off our field goal shots. I mean, we made 37% of them in game 2, which is pretty awful. So I think those are 2 key aspects to our offense that really need to step up in this game in order to win.
Kevin, as another person like myself who does not have a rooting interest in this, just wants good basketball, although it would not hurt me to see the Warriors lose. I'll admit that. I like new teams. As much as the Celtics going for banner 18 doesn't feel new, like it is kind of new. I don't know. I guess my question for you, though, Kevin, is as you're watching what the Celtics are doing, this is kind of over the course of basketball. It used to be ground and pound, big man. I'm a Rockets guy. Got a King Minaj one right there. Like, right. You know, all that kind of stuff. As you should. As I should. You had the Spurs with Duncan and Robinson. Obviously, Jordan got to the rim plenty on his own thing. But I guess my question to you, Kev, is why aren't the Celtics getting late? Like, are you seeing any? Like, why are they only shooting threes? As Daniel pointed out, they're not even shooting great percentages. Like, what's the thought there?
Well, that's the way the NBA has gone right now. The Mavericks, you know, they're built pretty much, you know, a 3-point shot. And so it's an NBA-wide thing where you'd rather go 2 for 22 from 3 instead of trying and maybe hitting 4 or 5 2-point shots to get your rhythm going. They just rather just jack it up from 3, whether they hit the shot or not. And so when you're not hitting your threes, that's when the other team is getting the defensive rebounds and they're getting their offense running. And so live by the 3, die by the 3 is certainly an apt statement for today's NBA game. And the Warriors, as we know, can get out on the offensive fast break about as well as anybody can. And to me, I think that, like you're saying, get the ball inside, work it. Horford's down there. He can, hit a turnaround jumper. He could hit a shot right there, 10 feet out. And so they need to do a little bit more of that, I think, to be able to build up some offensive rhythm. And once you get that going, then they could kick it out and see how it's working out there and hit the open threes and really get your offense running.
Antonio, again, I know I've said this 1,000 times. You covered this team all year. They both shot, the Warriors and Celtics, 37 threes. They shot 37 threes in game 2. I think we all think of the Warriors as being that team that shoots all the threes. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole's, making a name for himself this year. Even guys like Otto Porter, right? I don't know that I thought of the Celtics as that team. I certainly don't. It's not like I don't think Tatum or Brown can shoot those shots. Horford even is kind of special in the fact that every now and then he'll pop one off too. I guess I just didn't see this coming. Did you see this coming? Did you see them going shot for shot behind the 3-point line with the Celtics? To whatever degree you want to say that they shot with the Celtics.
I hopped on, I believe High Low Sports. We talked about, one of the questions was, who do you think is the better 3-point shooting team? And I think the Celtics have more guys who can shoot. So you have Tatum, Brown, Smart, White, Horford, Grant Williams, Peyton Pritchard, even Daniel Tice can shoot it. But what I don't want the Celtics to do is try to outshoot the Warriors. And it's not so much the Warriors. Wiggins is not a great shooter. As sad as it is, say I like him a lot. Draymond shoots like he has a backpack on, and Kevin Looney's not taking those shots. It's really Steph Curry. He'll beat you by himself, and if he gets going, then Clay gets going, and Clay gets going, Poole gets going. So I mean, I think the teams both had their spurts shooting. Obviously, the Celtics at fourth quarter, they went, I believe, 7 for 12 from 3 in the quarter. And then the Warriors obviously erupted in the third quarter. So, I mean, I think they've been going tack for tack, which I'm surprised Boston has. I thought, like Kevin said, I was hoping they would drive more, try to find their rhythm inside the paint with Brown and Tatum getting aggressive. And Tatum and Brown have been settling. They've been settling too much on threes, and then when they're driving, they're thinking they're too cut off, so they have to turn around, hit these jumpers. While they don't miss them a lot, they do make those shots. I think they should try to get to the line, see their shots fall, and then they can move back to three. So both teams have been shooting the three well, but when it comes down to it, you can't put like 8 guys together to even match the magnitude that Steph Curry will put out from three. So,
well, and that's why he's the 2-time MVP, the 3-point rating, all those kinds of things. I will say, and this is off script, so I'm sorry. I sent the guys notes ahead of time, and this is a little bit off. It does feel like through 2 games, the ding on Steph Curry has been like, yes, his averages look great in the finals, but he actually hasn't been himself for like big stretches of his times in the NBA Finals. Even in years the Warriors won, the time he looked like he was taking over, frankly, was in 2019 once Durant and Thompson, those guys gotten hurt. Curry was going crazy, but they just didn't have enough behind him at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is open forum. We can start doing it more that route. But what does it feel like Curry is doing something different, or is it like the moment's not too big for him at all? Whereas like in 2015, it might have felt that way, or 2018 and 17, he had Durant alongside him or whatever. I feel like we're seeing kind of a different guy in the finals. Am I the only one thinking that?
I agree. I think he has been great no matter what. I mean, he's Steph Curry. He's going to be great no matter what. I mean, there's not much to say about that. But I think this is a more team player, Steph Curry. I mean, he's always been a team player, but he's been making that extra pass to Poole or to Thompson, and it's been working for the team. And so I feel like he's just been kind of spreading the love, sharing the wealth, I guess you can call it, with his other teammates. And I feel like they just have such a great bond in that, and they've kind of created like this new Splash Brothers since everybody left Steph all alone in the Warriors. And I think ultimately, I think he's just kind of taken a step back and realized like, okay, I've done a lot by myself, but it's time to kind of share that with other people on my team. And I think he's just been kind of a less selfless player, I guess.
Tony, you're going to chime in?
I think the difference, like, I guess between Curry this finals and then like the Kevin Durant finals and then the first 2 where you didn't have him, I don't know if he had any case to beat Kevin Durant to get a Finals MVP. Like he was playing phenomenal. Like that's not out the question. But Kevin Durant was arguably the best player in the world at that time, so he was going to go put up 37-7. That's kind of tough for Curry to do. But I honestly think this Finals MVP is his to lose. He's been playing phenomenal, but it's kind of in like spurts. So like game 1, quarter 1, he has 21 points. Second quarter, he is 0. Like those are the type of things that will make him end up losing his MVP. Like in 2015, when they're playing the Cavs the first time, yeah, he's playing great, but the first 2 games you had like 21 points, 19 points, and it's not like Kyrie Irving's not like a well-known defender, but like you had Matthew Dellavedova on you, so like you got this like short guard who's come out of nowhere, and he's giving
an Australian notoriously hyped up on caffeine so much so that he went to like full body cramps one game.
Yeah, like the dude is the imported TJ McConnell. Like he really played with a lot of fire, and I think those first 2 games alone messed up his Finals MVP case. And then you're kind of we can't give it to Clay. He's too inconsistent. We're not going to give it to Draymond Green. So then you're like, this guy guarded LeBron. Let's give it to him. So Curry, he's he's playing phenomenal. Obviously, I think he dropped 31 and 29 in these first 2 games. I just know he's played really good, but he has to be more consistent in game. It's kind of like Brown and Tatum. Brown last game, I believe he had 13 first quarter points. I don't think he finished the game with 20. Like you can't do that. Like if you're gonna start hot, finish hot. And if you're gonna not finish hot, work with the guys around you. Get Clay some shots. Like the voters will notice that because the voters are also are the same people at ESPN that are trying to make Warriors 12% chances to win this. Apparently, Boston's overwhelmingly favorite.
I think that a lot of those statistics come from the idea, though, that like once the team takes home court advantage in that sense, they stole game 1. Now they have 3 games in Boston. You start doing averages. Things should play out their way. I think that the 12% is probably a little low. It doesn't surprise me that they're favorite, though, right, Antonio? I mean, like they did get a game on the road.
Win, so I picked them to win.
Kevin, we're talking a lot about Steph Curry's past finals because it makes this one stick out. I think it's worth pointing out that like LeBron James on the losing team gets more votes for Finals MVP in 2015 than Steph Curry does. There's a lot of arguments to say like Andre Iguodala got Finals MVP for basically holding LeBron to 36 a game.
Insanity.
I think there's also some nuance to the idea that like inserting Iguodala into the starting lineup in that series changed the whole dynamics of it. Whatever you think about that. Durant got in 17-18. 19, I guess the Warriors had won. He'd have gotten it, they didn't. All that is long way around to say that. What have you noticed about Steph Curry, Kevin, as you've been watching these finals? Does he feel different to you, or is it really the same guy? We're just a different opponent.
Well, what it seems like to me is Antonio mentioned that is he got 21 points in the quarter number 1 in the first game, and in the second game he had 14 points in the third. And that's approximately half of his points that he scored in both games. He got it in 2 quarters. And I think that he's got to spread that out a little bit where you get 10 in the first, then you get 8 in the second, then there's a little bit more consistency. Because if he's doing that for 4 quarters, then it's going to be pretty tough for any team to match that kind of production, but he has not put that together. And I think that he really kind of does need to do that so that everybody's like, oh, wow, Steph Curry, woo. And so I'm looking to see if he can do that, especially because if you look at Thompson, he's been pretty invisible in these first 2 games. And if he doesn't get it going, then it's going to fall on Curry in that backcourt pretty much on, to himself. And we all, Thompson, he's overcoming injuries and he's really not been himself. And, but if he doesn't get it together, then Curry's going to need to carry that backcourt, which we know he can do. But I think the advantage there's no back-to-back games or anything like that. So you can sit there and you can play an intense 4th quarter games, not knowing that you can take tomorrow off and maybe even the next day. And so I think that's what Curry needs to do is put together 4 quarters of consistent basketball, not 1 quarter, and then that we'll just do what we do after that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, too, that like in the finals this year, we're back to kind of like the way it would have been 2019 would have been last time we had like this many days between games. We're not rushing in the bubble. We're not rushing to get in for the Olympics and those kind of things. I think it's interesting a couple of things. One, the Klay Thompson thing's baffling to me because even while I don't expect the defense being anywhere near the same, the shooting being off is, he's a catch and shoot guy. I think it's interesting to see that, like, as y'all see, he's apparently been seen in the locker room just watching highlights of Game 6 Klay, like watching.
I did see that. And he's watching YouTube from 2016, I guess. And
yeah.
And so far, that has not. I guess it fires him up mentally, but it hasn't had an impact in either game so far.
What I love about that, though, is that like the idea like he can literally watch himself doing this before. The moment is not too big. He can no, this
Right.
is he can get his phone out.
This is the guy. What did he
this
have?
is
Like
me.
25 points or what was it? 30 points in one quarter.
Yeah, it was
at
38.
38. Okay. And so he can do it. We know he can do it, but we haven't seen it yet. And
I think my favorite Klay Thompson stat, though, and I don't mean to cut you off, Kevin, though, is the game he had 60 points. He dribbled the ball 11 times.
Well, there you go. He knows this spot and just catch the ball, put it up, and then go back the other way.
Catch shoot.
I'm surprised Draymond let him dribble it 11 times.
Yeah. No, completely. I think it's a ton of fun. The other thing I'll say, and this is very much off script because this apparently just happened on Twitter, the Warriors had to pause their warm-ups because they broke out a ladder and measuring stick. The rim was too high, folks. the rim was too high.
Great.
And
that is going to be great.
So the stadium known for the dark, the old Garden, I guess the dark back alley the Lakers would take when they would go, Magic Johnson era, or the AC wouldn't quite be working right in the visitor locker room. Now we've got the baskets too high. Boston can't escape this, Danielle. What?
So do we need to get Gene Hackman out here to measure the basketball the rim? Is that what we need to do?
Well, and I will say that's the clip that just popped up on the Twitter feed here, is that they have a literal 10-foot meters, it's obviously more than a meter, measuring out the rim. It is straight out of Pee-wee looking stuff. It's really funny. But I'm sure this, when the Celtics win the whole thing and we're looking back in the folklore of the home court advantage that is Boston, there'll be all this well, obviously the road teams didn't shoot as well because they warmed up on the wrong sides or whatever, right? Just so much chaos because that's how it always seems to go. Home court is in Boston now because they won game one, and it does seem to shift things back that direction. Antonio, I actually don't remember what your prediction was, but before games 1 and 2, what was your prediction on the series?
I had the Celtics in 7. They've been a great road team up to this point, and they actually been a poor home team, but hopefully that changes in the biggest stage. No, I believe they are 8-2 up to this point on the road, and they are 6-0 after a loss this postseason, which is unheard of stuff. This team is very resilient, but they have to just put back-to-back games together like they did in the first round series and then for that 2-game stretch against Miami. But after games 1 and 2, I can see this team. I can see the Celtics winning in 6. As long as Klay Thompson continues to play this way, because if it gets to that game 6, he might decide I'm an all NBA level player. If he chooses to be that guy, then we might be going to 7. But I think it would actually go to 6. Now that I've actually got to see these two, duke it out back and forth at least twice.
To your credit, predicting a 7-game series mean that they had to win game 7 on the road. They just already done that, right? Danielle. Yeah. You're a Celtics fan. What was your prediction going into the series?
My prediction at the beginning of the series was that the Warriors are going to win in 7. So I really hated doing that to my team, but I was just very skeptical going into it based off of the way I saw the Miami series. That game 7 in Miami, I almost had a heart attack in the last 2 minutes of it because it seemed to all go downhill and everything was just not looking our way. So I was very shocked we won that game at the end of the day. I was very happy we did, but I could not sleep because of how anxiety-filled I was after that game. And so
almost let it go.
Yeah, it was just that close from all going away. Luckily, Butler decided to take that shot and everything was kind of sealed from there. So I kind of thank him for that. But after that series, I immediately was like, yeah, Warriors are going to win this in 7 because I was just so doubtful of my team. Obviously, I can see it kind of going either way since I've seen 2 incredible games from both teams, and I can see that both of them are capable of putting up great points. And Celtics are one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. We obviously have the best defensive player in the NBA and Marcus Smart. So I think if he really shows up, I think that can definitely lead us further. So hopefully I'm wrong, but we'll see.
Kevin, not that the first 2 games wouldn't change it. Do you remember what your prediction was? Were you anywhere on the books with your prediction for the series?
I was thinking it would be the Warriors in 7 as well. As you're in the Dallas area, so you probably saw how all the people over here were predicting that the Mavericks were going to beat the Warriors in 6 games, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing over there. You might want to check your food and see what you're consuming down there.
I won't throw the guy's name under the bus, but I think I heard a local radio guy. Kevin and I both live in Dallas. I heard a local radio guy say Mavs in 5, and I was like, so you got him winning 2 games in the Bay.
No.
I didn't buy into that. Just so everybody knows. But the fact of the matter is that they put the Mavericks away with relative ease. And if that's the kind of team that plays in these finals, the Celtics can't match them, I don't think. But we already saw what happened in game 1. And so I'm going to stick with the Warriors winning this in 7 because the Celtics have been playing with fire this entire postseason so far. Winning games on the road, beating Miami in 3. You wouldn't have got anybody to take that bet in Vegas. And so they've got the first one in San Francisco, yeah. And they're now playing San Francisco. So they need to protect their home court, I think, because if they don't win one of these next 2 games, I think they've got problems, I think.
Well, and it's kind of, you opened, Kevin, talking about how you had it going the opposite, where the Warriors won game 1, Boston won game 2. I had it going San Francisco, and then Boston comes back with a haymaker because they've seen the speed, right. And they had the great defense. And then I had Boston winning game 3 at home with a crazy crowd, and the Warriors, being up 2-1, the Warriors kind of flipping it into gear in game 4, 2-2. And then I did have the Warriors in 7 because I thought it'd kind of go home games after that. But I did see this back and forth playing out. And I don't think it was going to ever be 2-0 or anything like that. I think it's interesting that's flipped, though. The Boston defense, and I mean, they slowed the Warriors down in that game 1 fourth quarter. And it looked like Golden State was like, what are we going to do here? And then in game 2, the counter came. Golden State kind of had seen this best defense in the NBA and had kind of figured out what they want to do. And so I wonder if we now come back with Boston has seen the counters and the haymakers of sorts. I think it's interesting that Kevin again brought up that's the way the playoffs have been this whole time, is that games are being decided by 15 and 20 points because the decisions are being made in between games. I will say we've all danced around this guy named Draymond Green, and one theme of the first 2 games, I think, that is impossible not to talk about has been that Draymond Green's imprint on the series will be felt. Not just because he's incredibly vocal after the games. And I will say, frankly, I appreciate how open, blunt, and honest he is in a post-game presser. Like, for all of his antics, I'd like all 480 NBA players to be as open in the post-game as he is, right? We get to know what they're all thinking. I never wonder what Draymond's thinking, right? I always know exactly what's going through his head. I also will say, as a guy that was kind of an undersized basketball player myself, I appreciate the versatility and all the different stuff he does, right? Like, he's the point forward emulated. He's a great passer, great screener, great rebounder, all those kinds of things. Screens might be a little illegal, but that's the way things go. I have to say, though, that the discussion has become the aspect of Draymond I don't like. And we actually got Steve Javie speaking voice to it the other day in game 2 when he and Jaylen Brown get in the scuffle. Poof. And then Jaylen Brown stands up, and then Draymond actually tugs at his shorts on his own way up, and that's on its own awkwardness. Draymond gets up, they get in each other's faces, and Draymond Green already has a technical. So the refs give out no, in a situation that for most of the year has given out double technical, the refs give no technical, game plays on. Draymond only ramps up his energy, chaos, arms everywhere kind of stuff going on. And Javie, the referee on staff for the ABC Productions, is saying that when you're a referee on the floor, you know that if you call that technical, Draymond Green's out of the game, and thus you don't call it. And I appreciate the honesty of the ref there too, right? He's telling us what they would think having worked as a referee in the past. But it also brought this big question out where we're like, wait a second, you're admitting that had he not had a technical before, You would have called the double technical there. And what does that tell us about why are we not? I mean, we're just not going to call it because he's got one. This isn't like some other injury or something you don't want to happen. You know, knock on wood, we don't guys get hurt. This is entirely self-inflicted. Danielle, talk to me when you were watching that as a Celtics fan. Were you like enraged? Is it like, why is Draymond in the game?
Honestly, I was kind of feeling mixed emotions because when I first saw it, I kind of thought Jaylen Brown kicked Draymond, and I was like, oh God, JB, that was not the smart idea. And then they obviously showed us the millions of replays for about 5 minutes, and I was like, oh, okay, nothing happened from JB. It was just Draymond, of course, talking his mouth because that's just what he has to do. I feel like that's just how he goes. Every single game, he's got to be talking all the way to the refs or complaining about something. And so this honestly wasn't surprising to me, but I was pretty confused as to why nothing was called. I feel like it definitely should have been a double technical. I feel like there was no really denying that, especially considering the ref literally said it would be if they didn't already call a technical. So I was a little bit confused on that. More so just the way he played that entire game just got me really upset as a Celtics fan, especially against Grant Williams, just absolutely throwing him to the floor. And then Grant Williams getting the foul. I was astonished from that. I don't really know how that call worked. And I feel like the refs were just a little bit biased toward Draymond in my eyes. But yeah, that game and Draymond, I was pretty upset about as a Celtics fan the entire time.
So, Kevin, again, I don't mean to. We both watch a lot of basketball, Kevin. You've watched a lot of NBA Finals. Stars do get different calls. I mean, you got the Jazz jersey on. I'm sure you can tell us about how Michael Jordan pushed off in 1998, right?
I can definitely tell you how he did that because he did.
Well, so why is it that this is the way things go? We're not going to toss Draymond in this moment. It's game 2 of the NBA Finals.
Well, it's amazing to me that Draymond Green, as good a player as he is not on the same rung as somebody like LeBron or somebody that's higher up than that. For him to get this kind of respect, I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm trying to come up with the right word. But it seems like he's getting those kind of calls that the true stars of the NBA get. And if you're Draymond Green and you know this, you're going to go into the game. That's going to be part of what you're going to do. You're going to try and stir things up, and you're going to be the guy that says things to people, and you're going to try and draw people out and get them upset so they make mistakes. Kind of like, Spider-Man, way he, battles against his opponents, and he says things to people and they get upset, and they make mistakes, and Spider-Man beats them. That's kind of the same thing that I'm thinking here. And I think that it would do the Celtics well to just kind of let Draymond Green be Draymond, because you're not going to win against Draymond Green. He's been doing this for a long time, and it's his thing. And so it's kind of like he's playing checkers and everybody else is playing, or he's playing chess and the other guys are playing checkers. You're not going to succeed if you're trying to go head to head with Draymond Green in this type of game. It's just not going to work out for you.
Antonio, the Celtics have Marcus Smart. In his brief stint in Houston, I saw Danielle Tice get after it a little bit. They've got plenty of attitude, right? I think that they've got plenty of guys that could also get after someone if they needed to get to that kind of a spot. What is your take on this idea that a ref will not toss a guy like a Draymond Green, but if that had been like Peyton Pritchard and, I don't know, Otto Porter, they might have both gotten tossed.
I blame whoever refed the 2016 finals, because due to Draymond being kicked that game, if he had to been kicked from a finals game again, then we have to hear Draymond saying again, oh, well, if I wasn't kicked for this one game, we would have won. And that'd leave us with 2 finals with Draymond being kicked, and supposedly they would have won. I don't have a problem with the way, like, Draymond coming down. He could have put his feet anywhere else. He decided to put him on JB's head, which is not cool. But he, in kind of like Houston's guy, James Harden, he knows how to bend the rules. Like, he knows what is okay and what's not. But instead of getting to the line, getting fouls aspect, it's like the dirtier side to the game. He knows how to play chippy without getting calls, which I would love to figure out how he could tackle Grant Williams and not get called for it. Or
and
he
get
could
Grant Williams called. Grant Williams got
That's right.
and
Williams got
then he
called
was
for it.
he was run blocking on Al Horford for a Curry 3. And I don't know how he gets away with it, but he clearly bends the rules in a way that the refs cannot call it. Now, there's one thing I want to mention about the referees. There's two things. One, if you guys have seen this Basketball Forever graphic that the Celtics are 12-0 with Scott Foster, it is not true. The Celtics are 16-19 with Scott Foster as the ref. We lost game 1 against Milwaukee with Foster there because I remember the game. He was questioning. He didn't know who Jack Harlow was. The referee that needs to be scolded in the media is Zach Zarba. He is the worst official I have ever seen in my life. Mind you, I only watch him call Celtics games, but he is a horrible referee. And in both games that I can remember clearly, it was never like, oh, one side was called way, way better than the other. Like I'm never that type of person to blame the referee when it's a player's game. But to call it so bad for both sides is rough. Like Gary Payne's on a fast break layup. Jaylen Brown, I don't know what I think he breathed on him maybe, and they called it and won. What can you do after that? So Zach Zarba needs the Scott Foster treatment. I don't think Scott Foster is all too bad, except when he's playing Chris Paul. That's about it.
Well, Scott Foster, I think, picks favorites. And I think what's interesting about Scott Foster, and Scott Foster, by the way, we're talking about him because he has been deemed with, I think it's David Guthrie and what's the third guy, Courtney Kirkland, are the 3 refs for the game tonight. And I will say that Scott Foster has been identified. People are pointing out that Chris Paul has never won a playoff game in which Scott Foster refereed. The only playoff game that James Harden had won going into this playoffs anyway, in which Scott Foster refereed, was the game that he played against Chris Paul back in the bubble. And then Scott Foster picked favorites, but one consistency in his favorites is that he doesn't like being deceived, right? James Harden, you mentioned, tries to trick the referees. I watched him for 8 years in Houston, and I rooted for it, frankly.
I think he did a great job. I think he does a great job with that.
He tries to, he draws contact and makes you think that one thing's happening, or he makes you make the call. You're either going to swallow the whistle and he's going to fly to the floor, or you're going to call something. Scott Foster doesn't like all that. Chris Paul does very similar things. They make the whole rip-through rule, right, because of what Chris Paul does with the ball. And I put on Twitter today, if I'm a gambler and there's a prop bet that Draymond Green could get tossed from this game, I almost feel like all of the commentary around Draymond Green not getting tossed from games will make Scott Foster be like, no, he will. like I just feel like there's just something
a couple
there.
extra bucks.
Yeah,
make a couple extra bucks. I think I'd also bet on that one, like very specific prop bet. This hasn't happened yet, but Draymond and Marcus Smart haven't gotten into it. But I'd put the prop bet that they would definitely get a double ejection if it ever came to it. I think if they said one word to each other, double toss, and now you're both without your X factor. So then it's just going to have to be stars versus stars and see what happens there. But
that would be wild. No, I think the deal to me is just that, like, I almost get it being different on regular calls. I mentioned Kevin and the Jazz always forever telling us about how Michael Jordan pushed off of Byron Russell.
But
For the game 6, fade away. He's not quite fading away, but he's pushing on him, cross the ball back, top of the key for 2 to win game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals. Like the last shot in a Bulls jersey, right? And everyone in Utah will talk about how that is a push off. And frankly, people that hated on the Bulls, and I don't think people admit that those guys actually existed, but they did. They'll point out that it was a push off, right? Or
it was
whatever.
A push off. It was a push off. I don't buy that he had the flu or had bad pizza or whatever it was that happened in the series before that either.
I love it. The folklore is gone. But
that's right.
I do think that star players getting away with personal fouls, I kind of get, because we do want players to decide games. But players getting technical fouls, I don't know. That feels different to me, because technical fouls are typically given for things that aren't basketball. right? Like doing things that are not related to the game itself.
Yeah. Elbowing somebody in the head or, something like that.
Or getting up in each other's faces or
technicals heavily rely on the referee's feelings, which is bad, but I don't
no, it's
just it really
very subjective. Completely.
Well, it's kind of like in the NFL where the guy that pushes off, the referee doesn't see that. And the guy that reacts to that, he's the guy that's nailed, and that's probably where Draymond Green comes in because he's the one that's instigating everything. And then the guy that reacts to it, the referee sees that, and then he reacts to that.
Completely. And the thing that baffles me is it's almost like having the reputation that Draymond has. Well, I think Antonio made a good job to point out that the way this ties the 2016 final, so I don't need to break that down again. But having that reputation means that like refs come into the game, but I'm reffing Draymond tonight. He's going to talk a lot. Whereas if they come in the game reffing, I don't know, JB or Al Horford, or not to name everyone else on the Celtics, but everyone besides Marcus Smart really on the Celtics, all of a sudden you're like, wait, did you just drop an F-bomb? Like very quickly, right? Because if you don't have the reputation of being that guy, it's like the shock value of like, of course you're technical. You can't do all that. And right. I don't think that's fair either. Sometimes I'd say let guys talk. This is their job. They're allowed to be upset about things. But the up in the physicality aspect of it, I guess, is a little different. Draymond Green has been a conversation piece across basically since the start of Game 2 on Twitter. Any other last thoughts on Draymond Green before we keep moving on to Game 3? Because I do think we probably ought to get to Game 3 before it actually starts.
Yeah, that would be a good thing, yeah.
I did have one quick piece. It's not on Draymond. Well, it's kind of about Draymond. Ime Udoka was asked what he thinks like his players should do, and Ime Udoka simply said that to his players, if you are someone who wants to talk trash, just do it. But if you're not, then don't. He's simply just letting his guys play how they want to play against Draymond, which you're gonna have to.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is. This is probably the guy me that would get tossed out of a basketball game. But if I'm trying to cover Steph Curry and he's doing that bulldoze screen that you mentioned that looks like a run block on a down block on a counter play, I probably react. And I'm surprised a Marcus Smart or an Al Horford or somebody hasn't. And we may see that tonight because it's a tense game. And again, this is like their livelihood. This is the pinnacle of what these guys have worked their entire lives to achieve. I think that some of that emotion would be natural. Speaking of emotion, it is Game 3, and I do think that Game 3 is an intriguing spot because it's 1-1, right? If the Warriors come in and win this, they've got home court back. They feel pretty good about themselves. If the Celtics win this, they're like, all right, we are up 2-0. We got 2 more games in Boston. They've got to feel pretty good about themselves. Generally speaking, when the series is tied, these games feel more important. I think we all think of Game 5 in a 2-2 series, but Game 3 in a 1-1 series kind of carries a similar kind of weight. That's a long way to say that tonight feels like an important game. We've seen adjustments so far. Danielle, what are you predicting happens tonight? We know you're a Celtics fan. We also heard you admit that your brain over your heart, you picked the Warriors before. What are you predicting tonight?
I'm predicting that the Celtics come in with fire and they win this third game. I think they're coming in with the mindset as of this is a make or break kind of game because they want those 2 extra games on home court advantage. Like I said earlier, playing in TD Garden is absolutely insane. It's one of the best arenas to play in for both hockey and basketball, and it has such an electric crowd. That is what kind of fuels you to keep going in such a tense series. And I think they really want to keep that 6-0 after a loss. They want to keep that alive. I mean, you don't want it to just all of a sudden be 6-1 and now you're down and you have to go back to San Francisco. I mean, that is just not a good situation to put the Celtics in. I think they need to come out with the confidence that they're going to win. They are home, that they have everybody supporting them, and I think that will fuel them in this game.
Kevin, to you, what are you predicting tonight?
Well, I think that the Celtics need to watch that they don't come into this game so hyper because it is at home. Because the key to these games so far has been the Celtics and their turnovers. They had 19 in that last game, and that's far too many turnovers. And I got the stats here. They are 1-5 in these playoffs when they do 16 or more turnovers. And then they're 12-2 when they do 15 or fewer. And 15 is still a lot of turnovers to me. So they have been turning over the ball a lot, and they need to make sure they're not all jazzed up and losing the ball. If they can keep the ball under control, I think that they're going to win this game tonight. So the key to them is keep the ball under control and take control of the game. If they can do that, I think the Celtics got a good shot at winning tonight's game.
Antonio, it feels like 2 picks for the Celtics. I guess I probably know who you're going to pick. What are you thinking?
I have to go with the Celtics, but I guess this might be a hot take. I think it's going to be a reverse. I think Steph Curry has one of those finals games that cost him his MVP. I'm really hoping he cools down, but I do think Klay Thompson is going to remind the world of who he is tonight. And I think Jason Tatum's going to have one of those games that lets people know that he can be one of the 5 best players in the world, real soon. I think he'll have a great game. Game 1 played, bad, but was good playmaking. Next game, he had a lot of points, but he wasn't being aggressive. He wasn't getting enough touches. I think he gets the combination of both tonight. I think he'll demand the ball. I think he's going to be aggressive, get to the foul line, hit his threes. I'm expecting hopefully a huge game from Marcus Smart because on the high-low talk, I said that's the difference between him and Draymond. They're both going to talk. They're both going to do these things that'll help their team win. But for someone who's deemed, his stuff doesn't show up in the stat sheet, Marcus Smart can get you 20 points. He can get you 20 points, 10 assists, and 5 rebounds. Like he's been on triple-double verge multiple times in the playoffs. He's reached over 20 points multiple times in the playoffs. He's going to have a big game if the Celtics want to win this one, and I think they will.
Yeah, and I think that you're hitting on something, although Marcus Smart in some definitions is a role player, but he's so good I have a hard time calling him that. I also think I'm picking the Celtics in game 3, and then I don't mean to rain on everyone's parade. I'd also then turn around and put a lot of money on the Warriors and all of the overs in game 4, and I think that's the pendulum swing.
I'd do the same if I wanted to win money. I'd probably do the same. But
I would too.
What are you gonna say, Antonio?
The Celtics, if they win tonight's game, they will have been 7-0 after losses in the playoff. That is the most consecutive wins without a loss after a loss in one postseason run in NBA history.
Well, and I'm sure you'll write it well after the season's officially over, but we do need to also talk about at some point Ime Udoka. And again, we talk about this after the series is over, so we need to know how the season ends. But Ime Udoka's rookie campaign as a head coach is as impressive as Steve Kerr's, right? And Steve Kerr was deemed a top 15 coach of all time by the NBA, right? And so, you got to start looking at how smart was this hire? And frankly, it gets made by Brad Stevens after he just had the job, and what that takes, and all those. That's a postseason or an after postseason conversation, off-season conversation. But I think that's an important thing to bring up because that definitely plays into that. You mentioned Marcus Smart earlier, and games at home in the playoffs do feel like times where role players shine. I hesitate to just throw that on Marcus Smart, but I think whether it's him or Derek White has had a tremendous set of playoffs. Shout out to Marin Fader, wrote a great piece for The Ringer about Derek White too. I recommend everyone go read it. But Derek White is, due for his own big game, or we saw Grant Williams have game 7 against the Bucks, or, does he get hot from the corner, or does something like that seem to happen? I have to feel like one of those role players for Boston just gets 25. And I don't mean to say that they're going to attack the cup and do all kinds. I mean, those guys are all catch and shoot shooters. And Tim mentioned at the start of the show how Boston actually might have more guys. They might not have Steph or Clay, but they might have more dudes that shoot 36%, right? And so that's the kind of game that you could see happen out of them. I think Tatum gets his, Brown gets his. I still think Steph will, and I guess My thought there is that if Derek White is having the kind of game I anticipate him having, that probably means less of Marcus Smart. Or if Derek White's not guarding Steph Curry, I don't know who he covers, and that's not quite the same. Like I could see Steph getting his own 20 or whatever. He's not. I don't think he's going to get 40. So knock on wood. Now I'll go put money on the over. He's going to or whatever. But I just feel like the role players in Boston are going to step up tonight, and we saw them win in Golden State when really just one or two of the role players stepped up, and Al Horford and Marcus Smart, right? And so I just feel like they win tonight, and then Golden State turns around, and I would predict the thumping in Game 4. With all of that said, it is about tip off. I guess coverage starts at 9 o'clock Eastern, right? And so I guess that means tip off is at 8 or 9:15 or 16.
9:05, 9:10.
Yeah. With that said, though, we should wrap up because I want you to go watch the game coming off of this. Danielle, start us off. Tell us where can people find you, your work, etc. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, you can find me at Danielle_Dubs on Instagram and Danielle Dubois on Twitter and Danielle Dubois on YouTube.
Kevin, tell me where to find you.
Well, you can always find me at Twitter at Kevin62 WILSEA, and I am the senior writer for Belly Up Fantasy Sports. And so I have an article that comes out about once a week or so. I had 2 last week. And you can find me at Sunday mornings at 11 Eastern. We do the Belly Up Fantasy Live Football Dynasty Edition. And then Sunday nights at 8 Eastern, I am the host of the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show. And so, you can see I'm pretty active out there. So if you have anything you want to let me know or talk to me about, shoot me a tweet, and we'll get it rolling.
Kevin is always talking fantasy, so if you're the kind of person that needs help like myself, come football season or baseball season, I guess we're in the middle of as well. I also say, Kevin, as a guy that was born in Houston, went to most of his schooling in Austin, and now lives in Dallas, hearing you say Sunday, I was like, oh, I hadn't heard that in a while. So Sunday is a very Texan way to say Sunday. So good look there.
Okay, so I'll have to incorporate that into my vocabulary.
Antonio, where can people find you at?
You guys can find me at @Perez_17 on Twitter and @Perez17 on Instagram. You can find us on all social platforms. At Sideline Summit, that is the sports podcast we run. That we didn't drop episode today, but we drop every Wednesday around noon. You can find us all there. As Parker mentioned, I do cover the Celtics. I write about them. Usually depends on the mood I'm in to write about them, but I think regardless of how these next 2 games go, I think I'm going to get something out for you guys. It could be a good piece.
Again, I really think that if you're looking for people that are covering the Celtics on a more regular basis that are not like, at the ESPNs or the Sports Desk or whatever, make sure you find Antonio's stuff. It's always got a nice little twist on what's going on. It's not just the box score. As always, find my stuff at Ainsworth 512. We have it's been bi-weekly or tri-weekly depending on the week, but FN Sports, the podcast. I am a teacher by day, and we're on summer vacation. And anyway, FN Sports is grading sports stuff and sports topics. So make sure you find all that fun stuff. That's wherever you get your audio pods. There's no video elements to that. But thank you all for tuning in tonight to the Belly Up Basketball Show. If y'all like this, make sure you subscribe to Belly Up Sports, like the show, leave some comments, let us know you liked it. We may get this thing going more often. We may just do it for the finals, may do it for the draft, who knows? But thank y'all so much for being on tonight.
There's already a thing that Belly Up's doing for the draft when they do the draft. So
we should plug that. Brad Patton's been covering draft prospects the whole since January. He's doing a draft show. They're going to do the full 2 rounds.
I will be on that, so you can check me out there as well.
Kevin will be on that, so make sure you watch that for more Sunday type. No, I'm joking, but there'll be lots of fun stuff there. They're doing all 60 picks, first and second round, so make sure you check that out. Again, subscribe, leave some comments, let us know what you think. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and I guess most of us are cheering for the Celtics.
I don't know about cheering. I'm cheering for a great game.
For a great game.
I'm cheering for a great game. I do expect the Celtics to win tonight.
Both teams need to play hard. I like it. We didn't talk about how it's bleed green versus gold blooded, but that's some fun back and forth there. Maybe next time. All right,
that's nice. I actually just noticed that.
Take care, everybody.